here, so we'll begin. Today I'm going to talk about the big tournament Tata Steel in Zee in the Netherlands. That's been one of the most major tournaments for the last 50 or 60 years, having so many of the world's best players. And this year they have Magnus Carlsen with many other of the top 10. Ding Liren being number 3 in the world, he's playing there. And we have our own Sam Shanklin, the US champion, who's participating there. Sam started with a couple of fine games where he had the advantage with both the black pieces and the white pieces, but they petered out to a draw. And now in the third and fourth game, he's also drawn, so he's at an even score, 2 out of 4. Pretty good in such company, but we're expecting really good things from Sam these days, so rooting for him to get a couple of wins. And our dear Magnus is playing in the tournament. 4 games, once again, 4 draws. Peter has said that 21 games in a row that Magnus has drawn. I don't think anybody here has drawn even half that many games in a row in their career. So, okay, that's partly his opposition's really good, 12 games against Caruana, but there's a bit of killer instinct missing from the current Magnus. 4 years ago, he would take a lot of risks, really pressure, take some chances, or have more energy to grind things down. And here it's just not working. There's one game I briefly thought of showing you where he got an extra pawn, a rook ending, 4 against 3, played on and on and on, but just didn't win. Maybe 5 years ago he would have somehow won the game, but still against top flight opposition, you're not supposed to win 1 extra pawn and a rook ending if they're all on the same side. So I'll start today with one of the decisive games in the Tata Steel tournament. And somebody who's actually winning games is Anish Giri, who had been so famous for his draws just a few years ago. And he's actually won 2 and lost 1 here. He's so amazing. He's turned into the most decisive player in the tournament. This game, we have Richard Rapport from Hungary with the white pieces against Giri. And Rapport is, he's one of the young talents in the world, really coming up. So they're fun to watch. You get new ideas, they play with a lot of risk. So they start off with the D pawn, but nowadays people don't play the classical long line openings that they used to. The Queen's Gambit, 25 moves of theory, the Ruy Lopez, 25 moves of theory, and they kind of go off with different ideas. It used to be that the knight wouldn't come to c3 and block the c pawn. People felt it was a matter of principle. You have to use this pawn to undermine the center. And there's some truth to that, but this is a developing move. It's not as common. Giri just plays very classical chess with the black side. With white, you can do something a little different, but black, it's good to follow the principles and play classically so you don't get into trouble. Pawn e6 is a classic Queen's Gambit type position. And lo and behold, immediately a threat to the c7 pawn to get the fork. When I was learning chess, people said, don't make such cheap threats, early in the game. Make some principled move. But it has an idea that you have to defend it, and the knight came to a slightly awkward square on the side. Well, no way to follow up, so Rapport just develops. Giri develops. Nothing fancy about the black moves, just purely principled. c6, and the knight comes back to the c3 square, knight to b4. In general, you'd say, well, what did white accomplish with his funny maneuver there? He's had to retreat. Black has got his pawns in the center, got developed, and it's true, the game's roughly equal. It could be that Rapport just wanted to get in some uncharted territory. Drop the bishop back to e2, kick the knight. Again, that's about equal. His choice is also about equal here. Pawn h3 to save this bishop in case the knight comes to h5. Knight takes d3, pawn takes, which helps out the center squares, but it is at the cost of the two bishops. And the one bad piece left for black, you develop it. And black's plan, well, this is his most natural break. Not ready for that yet, probably. Knight d7 is a prophylactic move. You see the white pieces jumping in, so let's be ready for them jumping in to their best squares. C8. And both sides are developed. So then you make some small moves, try to take some extra squares here or there before the action starts. Well, okay, not quite sure what white's plan is. Anyway, Geary decides to become aggressive and advance on the queen side. So this can be weakening too. The b6 square, c5 square, maybe the c file, but that's a balance. Knight a4 attacks, bishop to a6, and now knight e5 hitting the defender of b6. After black swaps, you don't want to play pawn to b5 and give him that c5 square. So the only good way to defend is bishop b5. But effective enough. Now Rapport decides to double rooks on the c line. And again, a question, what do you do? There's no really good active plan. Don't want to move the bishop, don't want to move the pawn. So in these type of positions, you make small moves, just improve the position where you can. The bishop is a little better here, kind of out of the way, defending, maybe f6, e5, and you just don't make any weaknesses. And here, Rapport decides to make some action with the white side. If you want to win the game, you have to do something, and here he jumps in with the knight, taking the b pawn. So after queen takes b6, pawn a4, pinning the bishop. And that at least looks like fun here. A pin, you've got this c file on this probably weak square after the bishop goes away. There's one kind of problem with that we didn't anticipate. You could go bishop b4, but well, you know, after pawn takes, one you can't take with the pawn because he takes the rook on c8. Take with the queen, perhaps. It's a possibility. Actually, the computer also suggested that, but Geary played quite a nice move here. Rook to a8, which doesn't make sense at first that you get off of this file that's going to open up. But he has a very clever idea here. And it would happen if white took the bishop immediately, which perhaps would be a little better than what he did. But he did the move g4 first, which is perhaps a bit weakening. And here is black's idea. Anybody want to guess this nice maneuver for black? It's what gets him the edge in the game, and he continued to press the edge throughout.
Look at queen d8.
Ah, excellent, excellent. Queen back to d8. Looks like a retreating move. And after the pawn takes the bishop on b5,
To h4.
pawn to a4. Oh, so were you saying queen to a4?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, well, you had exactly the right move,
At the wrong time.
but this is an extra idea. And the main thing is, where does the queen go? Because it can't stay on the b5 square. And that was the key, that the queen had to move away, and suddenly you've got two pawns against one over here, and white's pawns are doubled, so it's almost like you have an extra pawn. With the bishop and the rook here, you're going to get a pass pawn there. And this maneuver is what Lepore overlooked, so black has the advantage. And as you say, the queen able also to needle the king side. It's a couple things that white has to worry about. I think we'll go quickly through the next moves. Queen c6, b4, bishop to c7, g5, g6. Okay, black is going to have this pass pawn here. White looks for activity on this side of the board. Pardon? At some point, you'll want to loosen these up. He decides to try to loosen these pawns on the king side first.
Yeah.
Probably f5 is better than the move that Lepore played, but he played g5. And then a nice move, pawn to h4, so that white can't get a solid pawn chain in front of his king. King to f2. Now you may look at the white king here and say, oh boy, I want to get in there, start attacking. But you should take advantages anywhere you can get them. And one is, okay, you've got this pass pawn here. You know, this pawn may distract some of the white pieces at a time that you're going after the king. So before you do anything, advance that. Lepore locks it up. And then pin. Need to be set. And now Geary does Renata's move to take on e4, opening the game up a bit. Takes with the pawn in order to avoid the terrible pawn structure. And what to do. You still need something. Any suggestion for the black side here?
F6.
You're on a roll.
Oh, okay.
On a roll with this game. We'll give you, the second place in Vicon Z.
There you go.
Break open this king side. You may be afraid that it's breaking open your king too, but you always have to do some risk in these games. You can't usually have it all your way, that they've got no weaknesses or that they have weaknesses and you have none. Now, obviously bad to take. You start checking, taking the pawns with check. So 4 tries. Here he gets a bit desperate. Maybe the queen should retreat, but he's in some trouble, and they're all ready to move 35, so near the time control. And he lashes out with bishop to e5, discovering on the file. Okay, here's your lesson in tactics. You should have about a decisive advantage here. But white's causing a lot of trouble. Oh, takes check, takes, and then excellent, excellent. This is, you've also got 2 for 2 here. Simply hold all your pieces here. You've got the attack on this side. And remember, just in case, you've got a pawn 2 squares from queening over here. So it's getting kind of desperate for the white side. He takes on f6. Now takes back, threatening the bishop, threatening checks. Rapport had an idea, king f1, to pin your queen. And you've come this far, but we need some accurate moves to finish, because you can still lose. Just one tactical error.
Rook e7.
Rook e7, so yes, it won't help to pin because you'll trade, if it takes, pin, you'll trade and take a bishop. So, have to move the queen. The queen came to c6. Okay, very good, but
Can you play rook to g7 anyway?
rook g7 anyway. You're going to give up the pawn with check.
Yeah.
Bravo!
Okay. Okay.
And he did. He took it with check.
H8.
Or he actually moved to h7,
H7.
not to be on the diagonal.
Oh, because you can take the bishop if you place queen f5. Okay.
Yes.
And now you have
If queen f5, you just take the bishop a piece up with this
Yeah.
tremendous passed pawn. And if you would take the pawn,
Oh, it's made. No, down there it's got to be piece. So.
okay, yes, a queen and a rook. This is just over. Start
Queen to g3 works. Oh yeah, that works too.
just so he doesn't escape. That's,
Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
yes, as you say, it's got to be made.
Yeah.
So this was nice to see. Nice to see Geary mixing it up like this.
They went to checkmate and they didn't.
No,
Oh, they
he
resigned.
actually he resigned after the rook came to g7. He, like Michael, he could see it must be mate. Just gave up. So now maybe I'll show you a quick game of our dear Sam there. He's had 4 draws, so I'll go through today's game a bit quickly. But as the star member of our San Francisco Mechanics Pro Chess team, we have to be rooting for Sam. Not playing in the league today, of course, because he's in the tournament. And in this game, Sam had the black pieces against young Krzysztof Duda, the young star from Poland who's 20 years old, maybe the right now the best chance to be world champion in 5 years. Sam had black, and nice to see an aggressive e4 game. Sam chooses the Sicilian. His openings are very well worked out. Want to learn an opening? Just look at a Sam Shanklin game. He plays all the right moves. And this is classical old chess like Fischer and Kasparov. Taimanov variation of the Sicilian. But this is a little bit of a modern twist that White castles queenside so quickly in the timeout. So that's much more aggressive than the kingside castling lines.
Well, the queen f3 stuff was crazy. It was lined with the knight sack, but.
Okay, yes. There are some other very tactical lines. But this is a very aggressive line for white, which, young Duda, that's how he plays. Sam, he doesn't want to be run over. So develops, pawn to f4. Okay, it's castled, some of the pieces out, got the pawn center, just ready to advance and kick black around. So here's a very nice maneuver by Sam to neutralize this aggressive white attack. He plays b5. Now, e5, if you're just passive, move your knight, you'll get run over. But he had planned the counter pawn to b4 because he's fighting for these central squares. Now, if he moved the black knight away, the white knight could come in the center, and white would control the center squares. But now if the white knight moves away, then the black knight gets a terrific center square. So Duda had to follow up his plan and take the knight on f6.
Did he play knight b5 or was that just suicide?
Okay, that's probably he was considering that. Threatening the queen with check. And maybe you're going to win a pawn here, but take with the knight, perhaps?
Or take the other knight now. Because queen a5 looks really strong on the a2 pawn.
could be queen a5 or even queen to b8. I might even prefer this one.
Yeah, I can,
Well, you're right. You could take with the queen here or take with the rook, but I think in any case, black is going to get
everything.
really good attacking chances down here.
Yeah.
This file, the center.
So, sorry.
You have to look at these things. It's very complicated when they attack a piece, you counterattack a piece. There are moves to attack the queen. The black king's not yet castled. And I must say I enjoyed it. It's your classic tactical Sicilian. But these days the players are, they've worked it out, they're tactically precise, and it's hard to run them over the way someone like Kasparov did in the old days, where he had the opening worked out so well and his opponents would not. Kasparov had its team of Soviet analysts then, before the days of computer, but now everybody has a computer and they can check the variations beforehand. So there are fewer tactical mistakes in the opening. Well, okay, they exchanged off the knights, and white needs to develop the bishop. Duda aggressively plays g4, so the bishop can get to b7 and also advancing on the king side. Sam sort of checks the advance, so pawn to g5 would lose a bit of control over the center. And Duda plays h4, bishop to b7 with the long diagonal, rook h2, queen to d6. Now you want to move this knight, but it's also pinned. So queen moves away, and Sam just trades the knights, trades the queens and bishops. Rook takes. So this very complicated game has somehow petered out to an even endgame. Maybe Magnus or someone would still be able to press with one side or the other. Sam played king e7, and doubling rooks attacks the d7 pawn. I suppose you could play the rooks to d8, but Sam defends with bishop to c6. And then Duda made it exciting right here. It's an endgame, but he sacrifices a piece. Bishop takes on g2. Could just take it back, but check. King came back, and now you can't take the bishop because your rook is hanging, but Duda plays rook to c7, and now Sam's a whole piece up. Unfortunately, the bishop is attacked, and the rook's coming to d7. Sam moved the bishop, attacking the pawn, and Duda doubled on the 7th rank. If you could just castle with the black side, then it would be great to win the game, but unfortunately you've moved your king already. So there's really no way out. Kind of nothing to do. Takes the pawn. check. D7, king to D8, check. Well, suited takes this pawn, instead of repeating right away. Still nothing too much to be done. Sam plays this, and now they just repeat. Check, check. And that's Sam's fourth draw of the tournament. So, okay, he's doing well for his first time in Viscount Zay. But just to get one win would really move him up to the leaders. Right now, the leader of the tournament is Nepomniachtchi from Czech Republic. He's got 3 points, and there's 4 players, including Anand and Ding Lurin, that are half a point back at 2.5. Magnus is got 2 out of 4, and the person who's 2 people are in last, one young Dutchman, but the other is Vladimir Kramnik. Kind of a surprise, who's lost 2 games, drawn 2 games. And Kramnik seems to be showing his age a bit. In the old days in your 40s wasn't old, but now with all the young players, it seems he's a little burnt out. With all these high-quality games in Viscount Zay, I thought I'd show you a game that was a little more fun. So we all know the best tournament in the world is the Tuesday night marathon here. You have all the club members come and you get to play players of different levels, sometimes someone a few hundred points above you, a few hundred points below you, and then after a game or two you play someone more about your rating. But the games are very exciting, lots of action happens. Another tournament that's happening in the world is the New Zealand Open. And if you want to go travel, chess is a good way to do it. You can go to New Zealand, the land of the hobbits and orcs and, well, okay, the great trees and scenery. There was an English player, Murray Chandler, who used to live in London. He moved back to New Zealand after making quite a lot of money in London real estate and then started sponsoring the New Zealand Open. So a game that happened yesterday there was Helen Milligan, who's about a 1950 player. She's a Scottish immigrant to New Zealand, been living there. She was playing a grandmaster, older grandmaster, Daryl Johansson, who's from Australia, not too far away. You take a boat, sail 1,000 miles, and you're there in New Zealand. And to me, it was quite an interesting game and quite entertaining. Probably next week we'll do some games from the Tuesday night marathon, kind of like this. What's nice is they're decisive and lots of action in them. Helen Milligan had the white pieces and started off with a Sicilian. Check. Pawn to d4. And queen takes d4. Something of an alternative opening, usually white's taking with the knight. But this queen takes d4 is an opening Komsky some other people did to avoid a lot of the main lines like the knight, orc, and the dragon. And white gets a bit of space. One thing you usually have to give up the bishop pair in order not to lose time with the queen. But that's a fair trade. White at least has a little extra space and a little lead in development. Both sides develop. And of course, white could double the pawns here, but then you've really given up both bishops. So it would be two bishops against two knights, not particularly good for the white side. And she plays much better just to develop and get all her pieces out. E7. Once again, you don't want to immediately cash in, try to win a pawn, because you're just going to lose it back after bishop takes knight and bishop takes e4. So black doesn't have to worry about the immediate tactics. But white can play for development and space. One.
Keep going. Be worried there for a minute.
King to b1.
Novelty.
It's Fisher used to say this move does a lot, just takes you out of checks, the king's safer, a good semi-waiting move. Johansson plays queen a5, and now this maneuver that's common in this this opening, queen to d2, with the threat of a discovered attack on the queen, so that when the queen takes, you throw in the intermezzo with a check. So white has a threat. Johansson just sidesteps it, but now white's able to put the knight in the center instead of the queen. Okay, the game's roughly equal, maybe just a tad better for white here. And the question is, what do you do in such a position? Well, you go a little slowly to build the attack. Your king is safe here, so she slowly advances the pawns on the king side. Doesn't look like it does much yet. Black advances, trying to kick off the white pieces here, open some lines. Then again, just a slow advance by white. Kick the knight. Knight runs away. And now a nice maneuver. The knight is coming over to the attack. Basic plan of attack, get everybody over on the king side and just crash through on the king. And here, Johansson gets a bit nervous. Okay, there's going to be an attack, but you're going to have to deal with it. Maybe best use the time to get your own attack going. But he tries to run away. It doesn't really get very far. The king's over there anyway, so kind of a waste of a tempo. And she makes a nice move, knight h5. You're not worried about the double pawns here. You just want open lines towards that king, so you don't mind if black would take the pawn. It's hard to move this pawn because the knight can get on that square. Well, this one you just sacrifice right away. So White would get a lot of lines there. And now the player that's 400 points lower rated has the advantage. She's got him under pressure here. I see this over here quite often. But the chess master, of course, it makes the defense very well, so it's not easy to crash through. Plays knight g8. Retreating move. Okay, avoids immediate problems here. Say slightly more space for white. But can someone give me a good move for the white side? You have the advantage. Your king is safe here. We want to attack. Well, what's our plan? Okay, Mike, you are on fire tonight. See, this sort of move, you just advance those pawns. And sort of doesn't matter what the white side does. If well, that is probably going to be bad. Pawn to h6. You may even just leave the bishop there and advance. Because if they take on g5, okay, you lost a piece.
And you have an open book file.
You have an open book file, you have an avalanche of pawns coming, and the king far away here isn't very far from the heavy white pieces. So such a move, you just play with intuition and with courage. You're not afraid to lose some material if you're advancing it. Unfortunately, Helen became a little hesitant and first put the rook on the H file, but nothing's open yet. And now Johansson uses time to get some play on the queen side. She takes on e7, probably f4 again was a good move. Advances pawn to g5. f4, not worried about the forks because the knights jump in. Queen a7 on the d4 knight. Well, this game is roughly equal now. Black has some counterplay here too, and proceeds with pawn to a4. So the white king will open up a bit. The b3, sometimes a3 if you can get in on the black squares. A nice pawn offer by white. So if pawn takes, you're opening up the files on the king side. And f takes, you lose the e6 pawn. But the old chess master, he plays a very circumspect defense. Knight f6. Oh, excuse me, he first threw in pawn to b3 with big threats. Pawn to c3, and then queen back for the defense. pawn takes, knight f6. Rook and queen threatening mate. She probably should have moved the rook on h to g1, so this would still be working on this side. He defends against mate. And now just an unbalanced game. Open lines towards this king, open lines towards this king. Material about even, this pawn doesn't count. And, well, let's get another suggestion for the white side here.
Knight to d4 for the knight would take the pawn, the pawn would take the knight would take the pawn, get f4.
Looking for some very aggressive play. Okay, that's very sensible.
You have to check on between
And you,
them.
yes,
That's a problem.
and that's it. Thank you, Renata. It's time to make a little defense here. Do you-
Move upset down.
Things are going to happen, but let's slow it down. Let's save our king first, and then we can do Wasim's move,
Yeah.
jump in with the knight, sacrifice, and checkmate. But make it hard for the black side to get into you, and then chances are about even. And I think your knight to d4 is probably better than what she played, but approaching time pressure, she advances towards the king, and unfortunately, there's really nowhere for the queen to go. And this turns the game around. She just loses the tempo for attacking, and as Renata said, the check came, and this side of the board is opening up.
That's also past pawn.
Yes, but it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, but
That
what I'm
pawn,
saying is it has to be watched.
yes.
It's not going anywhere, but it has to be watched.
Well, perhaps you're right that she should have just taken it right away. That's
Yeah.
maybe a slightly better defense than what she did. Okay,
Because
now,
now your king is stuck.
yes, that's true.
But then you have a way out. So anything on the back line on the diagonal will kill him.
Yes, right now it's a little hard to get to this diagonal.
Yes, I know.
But you're right. It's, in fact, that comes later. Right now you get one more attacking piece, and the obvious one is this rook that's not doing much. So rook to the B line here. And black has a clear initiative at this point. And she does jump in, now looking to do something very active. But the next move kind of breaks the defenses down. Not a difficult one.
A3.
Pawn to A3 is just break open protection of the king. Doesn't matter what, either push it or take it, but you lose the C3 pawn. Black king is open. It's a difficult position in any case, but you will like her next move. She sacrifices just as you said so, and it's at least dangerous. You're attacking the queen. You've got your rooks here, but it's not quite enough. Queen E7, and someone was talking about this diagonal here. Very good. That's, yes, if the knight moves back, well, we have to defend that mate, but
You have everything's
here, maybe knight h5. We're well, we're already threatening. Well, not quite. Well, it'll be very soon with the queen on this long drop.
There is the
Actually,
chance
it's
for
rook takes, rook takes f3.
Knight here, rook takes f3. Okay, yeah. Well, can the knight take it? Queen checks, king takes.
Yeah, it must have.
No, you take, you know, checks and high.
Well, it's not quite. You have to do it a little precisely. This one's.
No, it's me, no?
Oh,
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
sorry.
problem.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, rook f3 doesn't work right away, but it's soon coming. At this point, she decided too much attack over here, and she played an endgame with pawns for the extra piece. But it doesn't quite hold together for white. The knight has to defend the rook. There's no time for rook here and rook trying to get a mate with the pawn. Rook f7. Straight. And we can count the material at this point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white pawns against 2 black pawns and the bishop. But the unfortunate thing is black still has an attack here. Bishop c4. The rooks get doubled and get down here. That's the end.
Why did she have to use, why did she picking up double rooks before moving bishop to c3?
He took a knight on f6.
Ah, okay, because bishop is there.
Yeah,
Okay,
the bishop
Okay.
went
yeah.
rook
okay.
here, bishop took a knight.
Okay, he took the knight, okay, so you have to move the bishop.
She just didn't quite have time,
Yeah.
one more move to double and get a
Right.
check on g8.
Right.
And this is almost enough material, but now you're right, this pawn is a passed pawn, a very dangerous pawn now.
Yeah.
And there's no way out of the attack. Rook takes d6. So bishop d3 threatens rook to b1 check. No way out of this. Had to take the pawn on a2. Now it's make the next move. In fact, the game finished. Rook a3 mate. 4 pawns for the piece, but made the attack in the endgame. I liked it though. She really put pressure on the higher rated player. Really had some good chance, and if she had done the pawn to f4 and just throw everything at the king side, I think she would have won the game.
If she moved the pawn up down there earlier, you know, then
The pawn to a3 is, as you suggested, to
would that have held the position?
yes, that would have helped tremendously. She would.
I'm just curious if that would have solved the problem then.
There would be some thoughts of you'd have to worry about a bit of back rank checkmates or
But she had both rooks down there, the backhand wasn't as dangerous,
yes, not you can handle that.
you know, given her position.
That was the way to play, and just get some safety for the king. Make it much harder for the black side to crash through there.
Because she had a good defense.
Yes, yes. Well, okay. I hope we see some really exciting games, and next week we're going to look at least one game from our Tuesday night marathon.
Thank you.